Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us the truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwat that may listen. May the blessing of election be over your house. My name is Brother Kwai. I'm back in here with another video, and today I'm just going to be discussing a little bit more and more of a continuation of King Charles and who he was, a little history about the Dark Ages and what happened, and a quick massacre that happened to our people during those lands, right? Because a lot of our history has not been taught to us in the school. And what's this is also a continuation of the lesson I did earlier in regards to the present day King Charles and Camilla. And essentially what happened was there was a man, and I believe the current king and Camilla, they were out greeting, the locals, and they had eggs thrown at him, right? And they were discrediting their royal positions because, he made some remarks about, some slavery and, how England kind of got rich off the slave labor. And there was a kind of a disdain for their presence, so to speak. So he threw some eggs at him. So you can look up that article. I think that happened early last week or week before. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more about who the real King Charles was and what happened during that time, so to speak, right? So I'm just going to pull up an image. So here is an image of the real King Charles. He was somebody who had, full looking lips, curly hair, dark skin, right? So this is how he looked in real life, right? And actually, just a fun fact, he was actually nicknamed the Black Boy, right? And King Charles is the son, or one of the sons of King James, who orchestrated the Bibles that we normally use, known as the King James Version, right? So he took position of rulership of Scotland and the United Kingdom after the death of King James, right? So just for context sake, right? So I have a couple more images here, but as a matter of fact, I'll just show you a couple right now. Okay, so this is a chart of one of the pages in the books, and I really wanted to bring this out as well because a lot of our people, especially when we were growing up in school, a lot of us Israelites were taught that a lot of us we just we just came from Africa, so to speak. And you realize, that's not true. A lot of us did not come from Africa. A lot of us fled. So you had the Southern Kingdom. We fled into the interiors of Africa. And what happened was a few of us, we fled into the interiors, and we had lots of, we began to set up shop there, so to speak, and dwelt amongst the West Coast, right? But another part of the narrative that is completely not told to us is the fact that you had a lot of so-called blacks actually dwelling and ruling in the lands such as Spain, Portugal, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, France, Sweden, Russia, and so on and so forth, right? And a lot of us we were, we were in a noble position, so to speak. We had land, we had servants, we had castles, and so on and so forth. Kind of like if you imagine Game of Thrones and you see how they live, that's how a lot of us were living until we got exiled to the Caribbean, right? So I want to show some more pictures as I go along, but you can look at some of the things here. And this is where a lot of us, so-called Black Irish and Black Scots and Black Welsh, after we were exiled, we fled. We were brought to the a lot of the Caribbean islands and some amounts America, right? So states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, so on and so forth, right? So there's a scattering of us, right? As a matter of fact, I have a quick precept on that. Okay, so this is Deuteronomy 28 verse 64, and this is one of the curses. And the Lord Yahweh shall scatter thee amongst all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor their fathers have known, even wood and stone. And that's right, and that's what happened to a lot of us. A lot of us were scattered into these different nations and different lands, and then we lost a lot of our heritage, and then we began to practice a lot of these so-called gods that we that are actually not even real gods, right? Like it says in Psalms 96 verse 5. As a matter of fact, let me just pull it up because I don't want to butcher it. For all the God, this Psalms 96 verse 5. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord Yahweh made the heavens, right? So a lot of the gods that we were serving in all these different lands and all these different captivities were all idols. The one true God is Yahweh Bashim, Yahweh Shai, right? So let's I'm going to read a couple of the excerpts from the book, The Negro Question, The Missing Link, and I highly suggest reading this book to get more of an understanding if you like history like me. Not everybody has their forte, right? But if you really like history and you like a light read, I highly suggest this book. I stumbled across this book while watching the Elder Malcolm in Chicago on his channel, so I read it and I went through it, and I have to say it's been a pleasing read, right? So I'm going to show a couple more pictures as I'm reading of what some of the things that were going on during those times, right? So I'm just going to leave the pictures up, and then I'm going to just read out some of the things that happened. Okay, so this is chapter 3, Oliver Cromwell, right? So that's a name you should look up. It's a very, very interesting name because he was responsible for putting out a lot of edicts, and a lot of those edicts led to the exile of our people, and a lot of us Israelites lost our lands, and we lost our identity even further, and we were pushed into a lot of these different nations, right? Like America, different Caribbean islands, and so on and so forth. So this is page 24, and it reads, history records that after the execution of King Charles I of Scotland and England, that Oliver Cromwell invaded Scotland, killed 4,000 men, and took 10,000 captive. So King Charles I, as you see here, this man was decapitated, right? Okay, let's continue. For some unexplicable reason, it took Cromwell over a year to end the war in Scotland. These black Europeans, so listen, these black Europeans were sent to Barbados, Boston, Charlestown, Cambridge, Concord, Hingham, Ipswich, Virginia, Newark, and the southern plantations. These are the facts that, ladies and gentlemen, these Scottish blacks are among us living in the Americas, and we are ignorant of their existence as well as they are, right? It has been reported that in the African American community, a lot of blacks have Scottish and Irish last names, right? So, I want to do a separate lesson on that, but that's actually true. And if you're one of those people, if you're one of those Israelites and you're listening to this and you're dwelling in these, areas or so on and so forth, you could look into your last name and there's a good chance you actually descended from those lands, right? And those some of the names would include, but not limited to, Brown, Wright, Donald, let's see, Williams, McIntyre, McIntosh, so Atkins, uh, the list goes on, right? So I want to do another lesson on that, Yahweh Rataza. But, that's one of the reasons a lot of us today, especially like the Southern Kingdom, that's why a lot of us have those Scottish and Irish last names, because we were actually dwelling in those lands, right? Okay, so let's continue. When the Scottish blacks were driven out of Scotland, the English, the white English, moved into the empty land and confiscated their property and took their identity, right? So, this is what they began to do, you know. This is the concept. This concept is not ridiculous as you might think. The same thing happened to the Jews of the Bible. When you get some time, read the book of Prophet Obadiah, right? So that's a heavy book, because that plays out the judgment of the so-called white people, these Edomites, right? Once the Indians were driven out of their land, the whites, English, confiscated the land and took their names, right? So a lot of the names that we had in those lands, they took on the identity of those names, right? So they became, the ones that you see today as, the royal people, with their, the castles that they're living in, and, they began to dwell in the spaces that we were dwelling in, right? The English began to call themselves Americans, and do so, you think about it, when Oliver Cromwell enslaved and deported the Irish and Scots and Brits out of the land, he gave the land to the soldiers under the Land Confiscation Act, right? So a lot of these acts and edicts you can also look into even more to get more understanding, right? So let's continue. So this is Oliver Cromwell in Ireland. Okay, and it reads, upon taking military command of the Commonwealth, he invaded Ireland, and history states that he committed genocide in Ireland against the black population. The black Irish that he didn't kill were he sold into the slave trade. In 1641, Cromwell had 300,000 black Irish sold into the North American Atlantic slave trade, and in 1650 he had 100,000 Irish and Scottish children sold into Barbados. There is an interesting law that Cromwell had published, and it reads, so this is his quotes from the edict that he put out, right? Those who fail to transplant themselves to Connaught or Clare within 6 months shall be guilty of high treason. You will be sent into America or some other part of the sea. The Royal African Company sent 249 ships to the West Indies, sending 60,000 African and Irish into Americas and the West Indies, right? So this is what happened, and this is a fate that fell upon a lot of our people, right? And this is the shame that our people, not our people, Salakia, this is the shame that these people who are ruling, that they're trying to cover up because they don't want this to get out, right? They sit up on their high horse, and I'm mostly speaking to a lot of these elites, and these people posing themselves as a royal family today, this so-called King Charles and Camilla. They're posing themselves as some virtuous people. There was a story of the Prince William and I think his wife. They were going into a lot of these colonies like Jamaica, Belize, where most of our people are dwelling today, and they're trying to see and maintain a sort of called, I guess, friendship with the with the colonizers, but they were met with backlash, right? Because a lot of information is coming out of the things that these people did when they were a lot of their forefathers did, so to speak, right? So this is Habakkuk 2:16, and it reads, "Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The Lord's right hand shall turn unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory." That's right. A lot of the things that they were very boasting about, a lot of this, the foreskin is being pulled back, right? And it's exposing these people for a lot of the atrocities they have done, right? So, and this is just one example, right? I'm just going to get more into the battle, and then bring in a couple precepts, and Lord willing, and this will be an edifying lesson, right? Okay, so this is the massacre at Drogheda. So this is Irish history. Okay, and it reads, and this is page 36 of the Negro question. And it reads, "This is a scene from the destruction of Drogheda, Ireland by the English in 1641. They stripped the people naked and drove them into the mountains to freeze to death, but not before uttering a strange statement about the English being wild men. Remember that the Irish were black in the 1600s." Right? So let me see. Let's get some images on that. All right, so this is the page I'm reading from. All right, and continues, and it reads, "In modern English, it says they took hot tongues and tortured this woman to make her confess where the money was. They burnt the bottom of their hand. They burnt the bottom of her feet and the palms of her hands. It is important that you remember these crimes are being done to black Irishmen and their women and their children," right? So, as a matter of fact, I want to grab another precept, because when you bring up stuff like this, people always want you they always want you to forget slavery and forget that these things happen. But all of a sudden, with the light of what's happening between Kanye, Kyrie, I just noticed that the Premier of Ontario, he's they put forth I think it was like a curriculum. You'd have to look more into this. My mind's kind of foggy right now. he put forth a I guess a mandate, so to speak, that students in grade 6 have to learn about the Holocaust, right? But what they want to do is erase a lot of our history and a lot of the atrocities that happened to us, but they want to put forth these people up on a pedestal and put forth their information like they are the real Jews, right? So, hey, which is very, very interesting. Okay, so this is Second Thessalonians 1 verse 6. Seeing it is a righteous thing with the Most High Yahweh to recompense tribulation that trouble you, right? So eventually at some point there's going to be a recompense, and a paying back for a lot of these atrocities that they have done, right? Because these are horrible, horrible things that they've done to our people. It further on it reads, the English impaled the children and bashed their heads against a stone. These are eyewitness accounts. Actually, I have a picture of that. Here it is. So this is what they did to the children. And there's a script on that as well as part of that recompense that I'm going to grab. But the first, let me just... let's go into the etymology of the word recompense. Okay, let's close this. Okay, so recompense, early 15th century, compensation, payment for a debt or obligation, satisfaction, amends, retribution, punishment, make good. Where's the one I'm looking for? Oh, reparation or restitution to another for some wrong done to him, right? So this is a wrong that has been done to us. Ultimately it was the Heavenly Father that was using, the so-called white people to punish us, right? But this was a wickedness this is a wicked act that has been done to us, and there's a lot more, right? So let's get another precept on that. Okay, so this is Psalms 137, verse 7. Remember, O Lord Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewarded thee, thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh his little ones and dash it against the stones, right? So that's this is all part of that recompense that's going to be coming to them, Slakia. Right? Because, the Most High is a just power, right? So they're not going to get away with these things. Okay, so further it reads, the black Irish woman is roasted. Okay, so this black Irish woman is being roasted over coals of fire while she's being poked with a pitchfork. These were the actions of the soldiers when they invaded Ireland. Okay, so they taser old men, women and children on the streets of America. They choke, beat, and murder unarmed men and women in the streets of America. And to be honest about it, they do not care about what color you are. So remember that the Irish were black in the 1600s, right? So this is an image of a woman being roasted with hot coals and being poked with a pitchfork, right? So let me get another precept, because all these things, there's going to be a recompense for all that, right? So this is Ecclesiasticus 10 verse 8. And because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit. So you remember what we read earlier, and about how they got their riches, right? So they took our people and then they exiled them, and then they took over the spaces that we were ruling in. Their kingdom is translated from one people to the other, right? So eventually, this kingdom is going to have a turning over in a righteous sense, right? And eventually, it starts with the elect, and going to be able to actually bring forth that righteousness to flourish on the earth, right? So this is all part of that judgment that they're gonna serve, right? So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna cover a couple more topics from the book, and hopefully this was an edifying lesson. And just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching this truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.